Hi there, my name is Henrik Mårtensson and I'm going to show you a little bit about how artists get inspiration for their pictures. Now the picture you're looking at here is one of my storyboards uh, and it's titled "The Sacrifice Has Been Cancelled." Now when I look for inspiration, I have a number of sources I often go to. Now for example, I have quite a collection of pictures on Pinterest. But for this particular picture, well, I got most of my inspiration from Facebook actually. And I'll show you something. I'm fairly systematic. So I have a mind map. I follow many artists on Facebook, and I've even got a mind map to keep track of them all. Now, for this particular picture, I got most of my inspiration from Frank Frazetta and Régis Moulun. Now, there were other influences too. For example, Bob Eggleton, James Gurney, and Patrick Jones. But the main influences here were Moulun and Frazetta. Now, let's start with Frank Frazetta. Frazetta was a fantastic artist. And this is one of my favorite pictures by Frazetta. It's called Winged Terror. Now, Winged Terror is a little bit unusual because it has a circular composition. Now, that's pretty difficult, at least for me, and circular composition is something that I struggle with quite a lot, but that doesn't discourage me from trying. I know that what I need is more practice. So I decided to try and do something with circular composition, but I didn't want to copy Frazetta. So now while I looked through pictures from other artists, I also, one picture that caught my eye was this one by Régis Moulun. And I got enamored by the shape of the building, the steps up and the angle downward looking up. So I started sketching a bit, and I admit I am terrible at drawing, so my sketches look pretty horrible. But it's a useful thing to do, no matter how bad you are. If you want to create something like this, I mean, I'm a photographer, but it pays off to start by sketching. So I just sketched out the circular shape. And then I started thinking about light, what should be bright and what should be dark in the picture. So I decided to have 3 light levels, with dark in the front, a little bit lighter in the middle ground, and brightest in the background. So that was the overall shape of the thing. When I had the sketches and a very general idea of what I wanted to build, I fired up DAS Studio. DAS is a 3D program, and it's a little bit unusual. It's a scene builder. You don't design 3D objects in it, but if you have a lot of objects, you can put them together into a scene. And as you can see, I have quite a collection here. There's a lot of stuff that I use, and I can build just about anything I want to do in here, and I can do it fairly quickly and easily. Now, when I build a scene like this, I can then render it, and I usually render a picture in parts, so I don't render everything at once. I render the background as one picture, the middle ground as one, foreground as a third. I may split it into even more parts. And by doing that, it's easier for me to do post-processing of the different parts. I can treat them as separate objects later, as separate layers in a painting program. You can see what the render looks like in when I import it into Affinity Photo, my painting and image processing program. Now, what I've got here is we're looking at a single layer. I've got most stuff turned off right now. And so this is a full render of the whole picture. Now, I can do things here like relighting it, for example. I've just flipped my spotlight on. Now this, of course, relights the whole picture. But note, here I've got middle and foreground groups. If we look at the middle group, there's a lot going on here. And if I turn that on, I've got, okay, we'll just turn that on. And then you see that the lighting here is a bit different. So I can turn elements of the middle ground on and off. And of course, if I turn the background lighting off, then it doesn't affect the middle ground. Now, I also have foreground elements here. And I can work with these layers separately. And that's pretty important in achieving the effects. It's possible to do with a single layer, but it would be a lot more work and a lot more difficult. So this is actually, well, this is not the final picture. This is what it looks like when I've processed it, but it still looks a little bit like a 3D picture. What I like to do is to give a picture a more painterly look, and we'll look at that step next. Okay, my last step is something that is absolutely horrible from the perspective of a painter. Now, I try to convince myself that I can get away with it because I'm a photographer. Uh, the thing I do is that I bring the picture into an automatic painting program. It's basically a program with advanced filters. Um, the program is called Dynamic Auto Painter, and I've selected a filter that's called Portraitist 4. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start a filter. What it prompts me to do first is to mark some areas that I wanted to be especially careful with, like this. And then I just set it to work. What it does is it analyzes the picture, it breaks it down into parts, and then it's actually going to paint the picture. It's now preparing brushes. It starts by creating an underpainting, and then it sets about working. Now I can assist it by telling the program where to focus a little bit and, and paint in a little bit more detail. Now, something that often happens with this program is that I can affect brighter areas, but it's difficult to affect dark areas. If I do something here, nothing much happens. I just let the program work for a while and we'll see what happens. When the program has made a basic painting, it runs an application called the reactor, and I can see slowly the final painting emerges. Now, when we have the basic painting, I can tell the program to put more detail into the painting in certain areas. Doing it this way is rather slow and it doesn't take full effect. So what I'll do instead, I'll just let the program work again. Okay, so AutoPainter has done what it can do, but I'm not quite done yet. I'm going to touch this up a bit, quite a bit, in fact. I don't like these brown areas here. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to get rid of them. That's pretty good. I'll just tell AutoPainter that I'm done. There is a lot of other stuff I can do in the post-processing with AutoPainter, but this suffices for this image. Now, quite often I take this painted image and blend it back into the original image to get a controlled effect, partly photorealistic, partly painted. But for this image, I'm actually fairly happy with the painted version. Now, this is just a storyboard, so we are about halfway through the process now. If I decide to make a final picture of this, I'm going to do a photo shoot with a live model, and then I'm going to make a lot of adjustments, re-render, and do the whole process over again. But this storyboard gives me and the model I'm going to work with a pretty good idea of what's going on in the picture. So, I think that's all. Thank you for this time and be seeing you.